love that. Absolutely. Yeah, beyond cool.
Here we are back at TPC's world headquarters with none other than Mike Levitas. Mike, thank you for inviting us. We've got some significant, amazing cars around us, but the car that steals the show is this very, very rare 993, but it's a special 993. Be sure to log into your YouTube account, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video.
This is a very special 95. This car was produced in 95 and 96, but this is a 95 RS Clubsport. And so it's a very special car.
From what I know, I believe there's about 1,100 or so RSs that were made around that time frame, but only about 200 RS Clubsports.
That's what I hear. You know, it's right in that 200, maybe a little bit more than 200 RS Clubsports, and this would have been the favorite car to take to track day events, to have as like the ultimate street car.
Now, many of you may be wondering, why would Porsche make, to me, what looks like a very much track car that's a street car, and it was for homologation?
It was. This was for homologation for GT2, and I'm not sure if the exact numbers they had to produce. Could have been 100. But this would have been so that you would have a GT2 homologation, and this would have suited that bill. And at the same time, it was the favorite of anybody going to track day events. You would have seen these at every major track event in Europe. In the United States, I never really saw these at the track. Everybody was building their car to be this.
Oh, that's a very good point. This car was never sold in the United States, which is why we never really saw them until recently. But you know, we admired them from afar, and as you said, a lot of us in the DE world, or those of us that had a 993, this is the car you wanted to transform your own street car into.
You know what, it was amazing. In the 90s, when I started doing DE events, no one ever even saw these cars, but yet we were building the cars to be the same way. We were putting the cutoff switches. You know, we were getting the factory parts because you could order them from Porsche. So you'd put the cutoff switch in it. You would put the brake, you know, duct work the same. You would do very similar aero components. And the DE, and you would even lighten your car up. You would take out the interior and try to model it the same. So as we go around here, you'll see how, really, when you look at this car, you'll see how the DE cars in the United States were evolving to be this car.
Now, your Porsche career racing, you know, being a specialist in the Porsche area, you kind of cut your teeth on 993s, and you know, from the street car to club sports, RSs, and all that world. How do these cars drive differently?
You know, it's amazing. I really, not to age myself further, but I really cut my teeth on the 964. And the 964 was very much the beginnings of the 993. It had a much more specialized front suspension, which was carried over into the 993. But what made the 993 a much more different car than the 964 was the rear suspension, the geometry. The tub was a little stiffer. They removed the area for the torsion bars. So that whole backbone is a bit changed in this. So this car was a real evolution of the 911. And I remember when it debuted in 95, and one of the people that we knew at the local track literally went down to the Porsche dealer, picked up the 993 from the showroom floor, drove it straight out to Summit Point, and we played around with that car on the track, and it surely was a fantastic car.
And what I like most about this specific example is you can tell it's been driven. I mean, it's a car that the owner looks like they want to enjoy it on the street.
Oh, it totally was. In my first car in Motorola Cup, which was a Canadian series, which turned into Grand Am in the United States when NASCAR bought Motorola Cup. My first car was a 95 993 that I literally took a street car 95 993 and I basically converted it to this spec. Gutted it out the same. We put a cage in it. Had to meet a little different specification for NASCAR. It had to have a little heavier tubing in it, but it really was these parts. The same suspension components. We set the rear caster angle up based on the specs that we had from this RS car, and yeah, it was a hit right away.
So as you know, in racing, you're always taking weight out of a car, and it is the same for when Porsche is building this Clubsport. So I believe an RS was around 2880 pound-wise, and that was already significantly lighter than the standard street car. And this is even lighter than that. It's about 110 pounds lighter than the RS, and that includes adding a cage to it.
It does. It's actually amazing. The really neat part about this car is the weight. That's always been Porsche's signature, has been lightweight, effective race car, perfect power band, amazing chassis, brakes to die for. Everybody used to think the engine was in the wrong place. It was always in the right place, and it was one of their keys to success. But yes, this car featured an aluminum hood, and I believe also an aluminum door, and that's tremendous weight. Those hoods were, I bet that's could be 40, 50 pounds the difference.
So let's now take a tour of the car. I think every 993 enthusiast or any collector would love to have this in their collection, but let's go front to back and kind of identify what makes this car unique.
I think the unique part about this car, Vu, when you really think about it, this is a cup car with a tag.
Yeah.
You got to just know it, because the cup car weight was 1,200 and some kilos. It was like 1,250. This car's like 1,270 kilo. It's amazing.
Now the front end is extremely aggressive, and I believe the front skirt area is unique to this car.
It is. The thing that was featured a little differently than the 993 road car, you can see, of course, the downforce in the front spoiler section. And I think this is really two things going on here. Number one, you get more grip into the front tire, and of course it's balanced in the rear. But another thing that's critical to a Porsche is the braking. So with the engine in the back, but when the weight is in the back of the car, when you have it biased there, you've got a lot of rear braking going on. So you can really brake deep without getting much tire lock up in the front. And you can do even more of that with more front downforce.
If you don't mind, let's pull the front hood latch and let folks see underneath here. Ooh, you can already tell it's very light.
That's lightweight.
All right, so no carpet, obviously, in a race car for the street. Now, there are some things kind of laying about that's not normally there because this car is in for service, so I think you guys have taken some things out. But right away, you notice something that's unique with the Clubsport is probably this bar right here.
It is. You know what, Vu? It goes even deeper than that. The first thing that stands out to me are the upper strut mounts. These are the strut mounts that would have been in a cup car. I used to race these cup cars, and it's got this mount, this tie bar that goes into the front end.
Now I notice this is pretty standard, bolts here, nuts here, but then you have this piece here that looks quite unique, and there's only one, and the reason being for it to be there,
you got a little prop rod.
A little prop rod holder.
Yeah.
Simple solution.
It's kind of cool. Look at like the hand craftsmanship. Look, riveting on the holder.
Yep.
There.
Now you talked about things that folks would do to their cars back in the day to mimic what's available on this car. I think a lot of people loved to put this kill switch system in.
It is. I remember on my car that I built for Grand Am, I did the same thing. I was like getting all of the parts really from this car. And this is before the Wooder cars were coming in, because still in the late 90s to 2000, this car was still eligible in the beginning of Grand Am, only 1 year. I think I raced it just 1 year.
This piece over here sparked your interest.
It did. The part number of that actually caught me, and it more looked to be the same unit as a Cup car because it doesn't have the street car number, but more than likely it's the RS street car, you know, the
ABS unit.
The ABS unit, yeah, for the RS.
So you've driven these cars. Are the ABS units, or how does it feel ABS wise in a Cup car, race car versus a street car?
You know what? It's amazing that you say that. I remember the first car that I raced as a 993 versus the 964. 964 had a 3-channel ABS system, and it was pretty good. But it really had one channel for both rear wheels. You had a separate channel for left and right front. This was the first Porsche to feature 4 ABS channel. So it had left front, left rear, right rear, and the braking was just phenomenal. In the rain, you could slaughter class. This was the car to be in.
All right, let's move along.
Look at the wheels.
Yeah, so these are iconic Speedline wheels. We've all, love this style, but more importantly, it's very different from the Cup car because the Cup car would have been a center lock wheel.
Center lock wheel, but the Cup car would have featured the same 3-piece design, lightweight. These were really great wheels, and you see them featured on different, Porsches. To me, it always comes in mind when you think of like the 94 911 turbos.
The bad boys car.
Yeah, the bad boys car. You always had the great speed lines on it. So yeah, great car.
These are still super rare, quite a gem if you can find them. They're just, like I said, they're just iconic.
And timeless.
Yeah. So
And look at the rotor package, rotor and brake package.
Yeah, was this a different from the RS or the same?
That would have been the same as the RS, I believe. I don't think that's any different than the RS. But it was really a takeoff of the turbo.
Yep.
That's what everybody that had a 911 during this era,
Upgraded.
we were putting the same the same Evo uprights, the same 911 turbo front brakes.
You were building what you couldn't get.
You were building what you couldn't get. You could not buy these cars in the United States. You couldn't bring them in.
Yeah, and this is another telltale sign that this is not a U.S. car. This
USA
is
car, yeah.
Euro marker lights.
Euro marker. Also, look at the arrow on the rocker. Look at the rocker. Now, that would have been the rocker like the Cup car.
Aluminum door. And then let's take a look inside. Now, what I noticed really was there's no loom or no electronics going into this door. It's just sealed off because everything is mechanical. From the window to the door locks.
Yep, little pull handle.
Pull handles.
Look at the pull handle, how it's finished off, though. Look right here.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Oh, yeah. It's filled in.
Good attention to detail. Everything's lightweight, functional, pure Porsche.
Now, an RS would have had a carpet kit.
Still leather wrapped.
Is it?
Yep.
Yep. Looking at the floor of the car, no carpet at all in this.
No, and look at one thing that Porsche did. I always loved this in the race cars too, and it was always good with your feet because your feet really have to be connected with the chassis at the same time with the pedals because your feet are like hands. They feel all the vibration. This is wood.
Yeah.
And crazy enough, I did this in my modern race cars, everything. I just use a plywood panel, real thin like 1/4 inch, with like a semi-gloss or a flat black so that it's very coarse and grippy. And that's how they built their race cars.
Oh.
Same thing.
Fixed Recaro seats. Now, probably the most impressive thing about a Clubsport is this integrated roll bar that's, of course, for safety, but it's also for chassis rigidity.
It is. But safety being the number one object, but yes, a big thing in the 964s and 993s was locking up the tub. And you would get the chassis to work. I mean, it would just flat out put down power better. It was worth lap time. When you did a cage right in one of these cars, it was lap time. And moving right around to the back of it, you can see the aero carries, the rocker. You're carrying the aero, trying to keep the air from pumping into the wheel as much.
And now you can't miss but the iconic rear spoiler.
Yes.
Now let's take a look underneath.
This is a bit of a project. We're basically restoring this car right now. And the car originally, because most of these cars were really used as track day cars. In Europe, this was just this was like the ultimate track day car. And so we're slowly bringing it back to life. We've put a new Gillette. You know, we actually had from the 95 era, like perfect condition Gillette heat exchangers. We've got all the exhaust parts. So we're bringing her back to her glory. We're bringing all the heater parts back into it. These were just such great cars.
Now I see some things that are missing here, so I don't see blower motors. This area would have been filled with a blower motor and
You know, at that I'm investigating right now, because it does have the wiring for the blower motor. So you've got the wiring for the resistor right here, which was your speeds on your blower motor, and then of course you've got the plug for your blower motor right here.
Ah.
So it's and this doesn't, you know, this has obviously been done recently. It's got a tie wrap on it. So, but we've got the complete blower motor assembly from a 95.
And then all the extra space over there. We know that some of the Japanese RSs and Clubsports were able to option air conditioning. So, but this one, air conditioning is gone.
Right, air conditioning is gone, and I do believe that this was never AC'd because of this pad right here.
Okay.
This pad would have held the air conditioning. This console right here.
Yeah.
See this engine mount console.
Right.
You'll see that when we had our cars that we used to prep for club racing, we would cut the console off, but we never could get that finished. This was actually manufactured like that. It was cast just for a non-AC condition. Notice also here.
That's the motor sound package.
I think
airbox.
I think it is. I think it is. I think that's.
This is
I think
what
that is.
everybody wanted on their car. That little chrome piece to show off.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the engine and transmission in this Clubsport.
Yes, you know, you got to remember the chassis is a 95 chassis, but note, you know, everybody, you know, everybody watching this is the one thing that's going to jump out of them right away when you say 95. They're going to say, hey.
Why does it say Vario-Ram?
Yeah, why has it got a Vario-Ram on a 95 car, which you know would have had a black plastic intake from the 964? So this would have been a 96 and up Porsche part, but like you said, 3.8 engine, which Cup cars had, but a Cup car had a black plastic intake, and the Cup car was really only operating in a high RPM level. This would have had also road use in the RS as well as this. So obviously they were using the RS for the improved torque curve based upon both resonance chambers, you can see. So the DME, or the engine control unit, would have been specifically tuned and the hardware built for a 96 and up automobile. So very unusual.
So like the RS, this is also short geared and transmission wise. Now I think the flywheel is different on this car, right?
It is. You can hear when this thing started. It's got a solid. It's got the lightweight flywheel in it. There's no vibration type of damper on it whatsoever, and you can hear all the rattling and the noise. The one thing you don't notice, though, compared to, let's say, the Cup car of that era, it doesn't sound like you're sitting inside of a Mixmaster.
Right.
And I did notice when it was up in the air that it does have a rubber. It's got the street car transmission mount.
Ah, okay.
And
So speaking of mounts, these mounts here definitely don't look like standard street ones, but they're also not solid ones either.
No, they're not solid mounts, and I think these cups may be inverted view, but I would have to really defer to somebody else I know in the passenger car. So what these would have been is a variant of an early G-body car. So if you remember the G-body car with the rubber bushings,
Right.
and then you had the washers upside, and they would encapsulate, you know, the bushing. So they literally used that, but it's specific design that was a cup car, race car kind of thing.
Yeah, and you can still see that it's stamped 964 375.
It's pretty neat.
And in the latest sort of horsepower wars, it's crazy to think this is pretty much a track car, race car, but the power that it puts out is roughly only 300 horsepower.
Yeah, but that's big horsepower. We're talking about
A big 300 horsepower.
We're talking about a 1,250 plus kilo car. I mean, this thing is like all about the business. And 300 horsepower in a car like this is just absolutely amazing.
So before we close it up, something that's kind of hiding in plain sight, this piece and this piece here is pretty unique to this car.
It is. You know, this was the fan speed actually. So the fan blade itself really looks like it comes off of the standard 993, 964 road car. But look at the difference in the size of the pulley and also the lower crank pulley. Crank pulley's lightened. It's a smaller, it's probably close to the diameter of the stock pulley. Notice only one belt, but the speed is much reduced because you can see it's probably less than 2 to 1 as far as speed. So they only needed one belt because you're not overdriving the fan because you're only operating this car at high RPM. So a very unique type of fan belt drive.
All right, so let's button it up, and if you don't mind, can we go for a little ride?
Let's do it. Everybody, welcome to TPC showroom. We just finished clearing out the showroom. We're going to do a basic recap here. We're going to talk about this beautiful 993 RS Clubsport. So we're going to recap real quick. We've already been in the workshop. We've been talking about it. Now we're going to go out for a test drive. So first, what I want to do is really do a proper recap so we know what to expect when we're driving the car. So let's just start. Bodywork. It's got some aluminum panels. You can see the interior is pretty sparse. Notice that the cage is a weld-in cage. Basically, this is a cup car with a tag on it. And it's got a 3.8 engine. The engine mounting is not solid, but it's a very heavy rubber bolt-in. So we're going to expect that it's going to have some vibration, some feel to it. I expect that even shifting the gears will be a different experience than a standard 993. This has steel synchros. The bushing is a much more firmer bushing on the tranny mount. Let's just keep walking around here. Notice the wing, aero, cup car wing. Beautiful piece. Just this car was, and still is to this day, state of the art. I just am in love with these 993s. To me, they were the epitome of the air-cooled car. I loved the rear suspension, offered a lot of tuning ability. You can set the caster angle, which you really couldn't do on the 964, and which is a vital piece. And the amount of power and what you can get out of this car is just amazing. Also remember that we're going to be driving the car and it's got a cage. So not only will the car be more rigid, but think about the sound that we're going to hear when I'm inside the cockpit. It's going to have a more distinct sound to it. No carpet set. You're going to hear all the frequency coming from the cage because the cage locks the car together. The suspension, it is 993. It's McPherson strut, very similar to the 993 road car, with the exception is that this will have aluminum uprights and not steel uprights like the standard C2, C4 turbo. This will have a very similar upright to a cup car and a GT2. A lot of times they were referred to as the Evo upright because it was the Evo GT2 car. A lot of times that was the go-to parts book when you were working on your 993. You'd put Evo cams in the engine, you'd put Evo uprights. I mean, that was it. That was Porsche's racing program. Even the aluminum hood is right off the program. So this is really truly a motorsport car. So yeah, let's take it from here. Let's go for a ride. All right, just climbed into the cockpit of the 96 RS Clubsport. Notice you hear the pump running right now. So what that is that's the power brake, and it's a hydraulically assisted power brake. It's not a booster. So it's different than the standard C2 would have been different than this. So it does have parts out of the race program in it. So that's pumped up. So let's go ahead and fire it up. Your lights right up. And as you can hear, it does have a distinctive sound. This is fully catalyzed. It's got the factory Gillette exhaust on it. It's got the sport muffler. Not too sure, but it does have the sport muffler. But it is catalyzed. This has got the full emissions control system on it. It's got the heater boxes on it. Everything's really right about the car. So this would have been how it would have sounded. I just love getting in this car. All right, let's take her for a ride.
listen to the gearbox. Now that's normal. It does have the rubber bushings on the engine mount, more like an early 911, like a 901 type of engine mount. But the tranny support is the Cup car tranny support. So you're going to hear the gears clattering together when they're just sitting there freewheeling. And then the engine is a 3.8 Cup. So first we'll just go through the lot once. I'm going to get the belts up and out. Definitely feels like a steel synchro. Just something about driving these with a steel synchro ring. They shift so nice. And I love the stock shifters in these. Tighten me in the seat here, would you?
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, cool.
Thanks, David. All right, so 996 getting a little heat in it. Nothing registering on the oil temp. You really go by oil temp on these babies. Mirrors are looking good. So first we'll just take a little bit of tour around here. See the TPC DSC Sport facility. Magden Motors is moving in here. They're an amazing group of guys. Got some fabulous cars. I mean, the amount of beautiful luxury sports cars, and I mean real sports cars. I mean, it's just top notch, and they're a perfect fit to have here. We also have a commercial truck leasing company coming in, so if our tractor trailer breaks down, we can keep it running. And we also have a detailing and a PPP paint protection group coming in. So I can feel the trannies, the gear oil's loosening up a little bit. I always let the tranny get that fluid moving a little bit before we start changing the gears. So aside from the clatter and the fact that it's a purely mechanical car, which brutally great. And really the gearbox in this is virtually the same as the Cup car, leading all the way up to my 2005 996 Cup. It really had the same G50 box basically, except that it became a cable drive car, which was a little easier. Now look, the first thing I'm getting already feedback in the car is the suspension. It feels much more tight and more rigid. A lot of it is due to the cage and the rigidity of the tub. The spring rates in this are roughly like 250 in the front, 470 in the back. So for all of you that, have gone to the track, played with your car, we're not talking about terribly harsh springs. The valving in it is a Cup car valving. So the rebound rate's pretty dialed in the back end of the car. I like a nice high-speed curve, hold the car down coming into the corner, and I'm sure this has got those. I looked at the part numbers. But all in all, the sensation is it's a Cup car that you're driving on the street. The steering, nimble, fast, super responsive. A lot of that is due to the Evo control uprights that are in it, also due to the lightweight. The wheel construction, very rigid. This is the BBS 3-piece. They're not quite as rigid as a single piece for sure, but they were a very good wheel in their time. And equally a great component. Now I've never driven this car before, so this is my first time driving it. I'm just shifting through the gearbox. Gearbox shifts lovely. How do you not love that? Absolutely. Yeah, beyond cool. Wow, this brings back great memories. My first real pro race car in Grand Am was a 93. I had a 95 993 that I used in the GS series in Grand Am. It was still to this day one of my favorite cars. Had a restrictor plate and won races with it and just had a ball driving it. Learned setup, you learn driving. These are just amazing cars. By today's standards, no. It doesn't have an incredibly big, broad, powerful, high revving engine, but for the weight class, it's amazing the acceleration. I love the feel that it gives me from the seat of the pants, from the engine noise, the vibrations, the feeling in my fingertips, my feet. Do notice that there's friction tape down on the floor. Now I think this car should have come with, on the Cup cars, they always had, or we always had in the cars, because I think it came from Porsche that way, a plywood floor that was painted, and it is. It feels like it to my feet. I like the feel of having plywood, paint them flat black so you get a lot of friction out of your heels, and you can feel the vibration because your feet are like your hands. They communicate. And even the downshifts, you can flip it. Great car. Now I get why, I always have. In the States, we couldn't get these cars, so when we would go to the racetrack with PCA, and I started really driving sports cars almost out of college, starting with a Mazda program that I was involved in, but then fell in love with the 911 while I was in college. And everything that I did was really evolving around this car. Since we didn't have availability of this car in the United States, we would do everything. We would emulate the parts, we'd make it lightweight. I knew the attention to detail. I knew that the horsepower wasn't the main focus. It was reliability, it was the power band, it was the right gear ratio, it was the chassis. And still to this day, it's all chassis. Wow. What an experience driving this car. This truly is a driver's experience. This car, you are one with the car. Notice the size of the cockpit. Literally, they've made the cars so much larger now. A lot of it is really due to, number one, crash protection. The further you are from the impact, the better. But with that comes a wider wheel track, comes a longer wheelbase, comes better caster angles, and the speed just keeps getting better and better. But you're part of the machine in this car. You feel like you are part of the car. And that's what I really love about it. I love seeing the fenders. I love being part of the machine. I remember racing the cars and just sliding the front end and just being one with the car. And you can't do any wrong with it when the car is right. So kudos to this car. It gets an A+. Chassis setup is magnificent. I can tell the caster angle when I went back and forth on the little bit of throttle. I could tell there was no torque steer in the rear, and I liked the way it put down power, and I liked the way it was braking and decelling, and that's a lot of it's due to the caster angle in the back, but we get into that at another time. But yeah, brilliant car. Time to sign on off.